Welcome. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Bitcoin and decentralization and power and what that really means. There was a reason in 2010 when I said the code is set in stone, and there's a reason why I said money is a protocol that doesn't change. And in part it is because whenever you change something, you control it. Anyone who can be a developer and tell what protocol changes do and don't occur controls it. So the myth of decentralization is utterly, utterly bad. The myth of decentralization is there because people are taking this thing and using it as a cover for power. Developers in BTC, Ethereum, etc. say we're decentralized, we have nodes. So what? Those nodes do whatever the hell they're told. Miners don't control the system. Few developers and the people funding them do. Why? Because they set the rules. When you set the rules of a system, you decide who wins, you decide who loses. If someone has a 5-year project, then you can kill it. You can change how the system works and make it no longer viable. And if you think 5-year project, that'll never happen, then you don't understand finance. Some of the banking projects take 10 or 15 years to implement. So if we're talking about things that actually matter in the world, property, for instance, if your system changes within 50 years, it's not going to work. Why? Because what if someone has a 40-year home loan? That's actually a valid thing. People do this. People own property for over 50 years. And if every year you have a protocol change, and you have to update the smart contract, you think that having to go in and re-register your property is going to work? You think you can have a property register that has a protocol that changes? And all this stuff about innovation needs to change. What absolute BS. TCP was launched in 1981/2. The only real change in TCP is the implementation of the evil bit. That was done on the 1st of April, about 15 years ago. The evil bit was basically a statement that if you're creating malware, if you are creating harmful software, and you're sending it over the internet, you set this flag in TCP to show people that you are sending a virus. So far, there is no RFC-compliant malware ever created. Strangely enough, no malware creator decides to set the evil bit in their protocol. So the only change to TCP that was required is never used. That's 40-something years. Even with IPv6, TCP is the same. All the innovation has happened within, because the protocol's fixed. If I can do something and create a project, I don't need to worry about it changing. I don't need to ask permission. Permissionless means there's no one to answer to, there's no developers to answer to, there's no one in charge of the system changing the rules. Stability, centralization, decentralization happen when no one has the power to change it, not even the creator of the damn system. One of the hardest things in creating a system is stepping back. When I launched Bitcoin, I said the rules are fixed and set in stone forever. I didn't do that because I thought I was perfect, that there were no flaws in how Bitcoin could ever be, that someone couldn't make a slightly better way of doing the protocol. I don't have that much hubris in my life. I'm not that silly that I believe that. But it's good enough. And by setting it, I don't control it. I don't get to say who wins and loses. I don't get to say what does and doesn't happen. So, Ethereum, decentralized, proof of stake. Right now, Vitalik and the Foundation own approximately 40% of the Ethereum that can be used in voting. Except proof of stake has a minimum. And now when you take the staking amount, you actually realize that 70% of the available voting share is held by one man. That sounds decentralized, doesn't it? Except there's no right in Ethereum, no promise not to change. In Ethereum, anything you want to do, you have to get permission. Why? Because the protocol changes all the time. In BTC, it changes all the time. Bitcoin's not this voting system that everyone thinks. I did note a few things in the white paper about voting, and I said, if everyone runs a node and everyone has an IP address, that effectively someone could just spin up a whole pile of IP addresses and subvert the system. I didn't say that was a good thing. I said it was a negative. Voting, no. I don't want to vote on the sort of atomic elements. I don't want to say that gold should have an atomic weight of 78. There might be more gold if I change it to 78. So what? If I decide that gold would be better if it had the same number of protons as iron, there's lots more of it. It's sort of rust too. So it's not quite the same anymore. There's a reason why gold was actually something that people cared about. It doesn't change. So Bitcoin isn't the voting system we like to believe it is. I've actually got a history with voting systems. I worked as the security advisor and developer as a consultant for iVote. iVote being the New South Wales Electoral Commission's electronic voting system. You don't want open voting. You don't want just putting it on the blockchain for the sake of it. Why? Because it can be subverted. All these problems that we have faced over the last 300-400 years, if you now start allowing everyone to just vote at home, how do we know you haven't been coerced? The difficulty of voting systems isn't that someone can vote on a blockchain and have quick counting. The difficulty is how do we control the system to keep the bad actors away? How do we create a system that doesn't have coercion? How do we know that someone hasn't replaced the software on your phone, that you don't have a Trojan? How do we know that what is being put on the blockchain is really what the people actually voted for? And saying it's pseudonymous, that doesn't suddenly make it safe. So stability and decentralization of power actually go hand in hand. Decentralization of power doesn't mean that every one of us suddenly gets to change the system. What I see right at the moment in the whole anarchy bit, and crypto anarchy, and basically communism or collectivism by any other name, is I don't like what other people vote for. It's wrong. I don't like, as a minority, that I'm the 3% and I think I know more than the other 97%, so we should change. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. Most of us live in republics, democratic systems. Yet, why don't we go and change things that way? We can sit there going, it's all corrupt. Is it? Maybe it's the fact that we sit there not being engaged, not being political, not actually taking a stand as humans and thinking that technology solves it. So if we have the ability for people to change things, if we have new code being introduced, how many people have done a code audit? Anyone? Not just static analysis, but fully auditing something. You realize there's a fully audited version of Linux. It's 20 years behind. Not kidding. The US military uses it because it is fully, completely audited. It is 20 years behind. They have programs to get all of the current kernels up. It takes them 15 plus years, over 100 people, literally, to do a full code analysis of Linux. Not kidding. A full static analysis breakdown of Bitcoin code, the original one I did, would have taken 8 years. Every possibility, full analysis. Never happened in human history, no. Won't ever occur. What is there? There is public auditing. The whole thing with Bitcoin is you see the change. It's not about cryptography. Bitcoin isn't cryptographic. It uses a digital signature algorithm. It uses scripting. It uses hashes. That's not the secret. It's all public. It's all clear text. As one of these evil auditor types who used to go around to companies and check their books, public's good. Public dissemination of information is a good thing. It keeps people honest. When we're doing all of these decentralization checks, really what we need is a foundation that doesn't change. We don't have decentralization other than it doesn't change. If Bitcoin alters itself all the time, if developers implement new rules, do you know what all of the consequences of every change are? Do you know what moving things out to third-party systems will do? Can you trust that system because Someone told you to trust it. If you no longer have a system where all of the transactions are valid, are viable, are seen, where you now need watchtowers and Lightning to act as third parties monitoring the system, doesn't sound like it's exactly decentralized anymore. So decentralization really is about moving things to the edge of the network. It's not about the nodes. The nodes are commercial activities. They're servers. When in 2008 I made the argument that these things end on server farms, it wasn't because I thought everyone needs to run a node to keep Bitcoin secure. It's exactly the opposite. It is because Bitcoin is about users, people, about individuals exchanging. The first version of Bitcoin had IP-to-IP transactions, one of the first things that everyone stripped out after I left. IP-to-IP transactions meant that I don't communicate with nodes. If I want to buy and sell, I do it with the other person. The edge of the network. When I'm discussing the edge of the network, I'm not talking I go through a mesh network of hops. I'm talking I go through you. I now deal with you directly. I buy and I sell and I invoice with you directly. I don't talk about having node networks of meshes that hide transactions from the government. I talk about the people that I want to deal with. If I want to invoice something, I do. If I want to buy something, I have a record. That was the whole purpose. Small casual transactions. It's another name for micropayments. The system wasn't designed to have a fee market that pushes up fees, because there's no such thing as a market that pushes up fees. Markets do the opposite. Markets deliver not to the producer, markets deliver to the consumer. Markets aren't forcing price up. Markets are making things more affordable. When you hear people like Adam out there saying, we need a fee market to push the price up, my answer is bullshit. We need a market to make it affordable. I didn't create Bitcoin so that we could have an expensive system that allows elite people in Silicon Valley to basically evade tax, buy drugs, money launder, sell child porn. I created a system that will deliver micropayments. When you can sell something for 1/10 of a cent and pay fees as low as 1/1000th of a cent, that opens opportunities. That pushes things out to the edge of the network. It means no longer do we need to create Silicon Valley's model of building apps, of building things to be bought. It is no longer about how many consumers do I get in my bloody community. Who cares? It is about making a profitable system, a system that is viable, not because it will be bought by Silicon Valley, but because you can run it and sell it and have it there as a corporation, whether people like it or not. Your consumers want to buy from you, you can sell, that's it. That's really what it's about. So, the edge of the network, these guys, peer-to-peer communication isn't a mesh network. If you go back to 2008 when I released Bitcoin, peer-to-peer had nothing to do with meshes. Never did. Peer-to-peer is direct end-to-end communication. Once you stick a node network in the middle, it's not peer-to-peer. Bob doesn't go to the node network so that he can transmit. He registers a transaction as if he got a check. I know the 20-somethings of the world don't understand what a check is anymore. I'm old. I remember them. These guys, they can communicate back and forwards. They can buy and sell digital goods, and then they can pay for it. And then Bob can register the thing. Why? Because Bob is the one receiving the money. Alice doesn't really care. Alice hands over the check. Bob cares. Bob cares that it settles. Bob cares that he gets his money because Bob's the one who wants the money. So if we want to build Bitcoin out, if we want to scale, then we use the system properly and we build overlay networks. We don't sit there and say nodes have to do everything. Ethereum, for instance, will never scale. When CryptoKitties came out, every single machine on Earth had to run every app. That is daft. If you think about it for a moment, every app, no matter how stupid, has to run on everything. The smallest node of the network constrains and limits the scalability of the network. That's just wrong. What we need to do is find a way of validating what's occurred so that peers can actually act. If Alice and Bob there don't get what they paid for, Alice and Bob can take action. Alice and Bob care. Charlie, somewhere else over there, doesn't care about CryptoKitties at all because he doesn't run it, so he shouldn't have to. So, overlay networks used to be a thing. Rather than making meshes, what we need to do is link and index everything. Miners form a near-complete graph. This happens on every network right now. If you're on BTC, the Falcon network means that the 12 mining nodes, and there are only 12, are highly interconnected, and your home network, your home computer, your little node does nothing. Why? Because these guys who actually do the mining have spent billions of dollars creating a network that has nothing to do with you. Those nodes are there to fool people into believing that they're important. They're not. So I'm going to also discuss the purpose of Bitcoin. I said small casual payments, micropayments. My aim is simple. Next year, I want to get to millions of transactions a second. We will. We're at hundreds of thousands now. The fees we're talking about now are about 1/100th of a cent or less. That's still too high. I'm going to push it down to 1/1000th of a cent or less. I'm going to make sure that blocks are full with free transactions. If people say about spam, my answer is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. These are full of spam. They're whatever the hell people want to send. And you can say, that's not commercial. And I say, I don't care. It's my money. If I want to waste it letting people spam my network, too bad. Here's the great thing with permissionless. I don't need to ask your permission. If I want to give away my time, my money, and let my network scale so that billions of transactions happen, I can. And it's not going to change. That's the wonderful thing about having someone in charge, which I have accepted that role. Didn't want to. It's not an easy one. And think about this for a moment. What matters in this system? What is decentralization? Why are we doing this? The answer should be simple. It should be opening the world up so that everyone can be part of the system. It should not be caring that someone's rich enough. It should not be voting because they have more money. Proof of stake, that sucks. You really want to have the richest people in society vote? Honestly? You want me voting for you? I mean, it's an honest question. From a blockchain point of view, if you want BTC to be a proof of stake system, as an example, some people do, I own it. It's whatever I decide. The amount of BTC I actually own is more than anyone has ever guessed. The answer is very simple. If you want proof of stake, it's proof of Crag. And it will be anonymous, because you don't know what I hold. You just know that it's anonymous, so it's all good. And you won't know that I voted, and you won't know what I decide. And that's what we're going to see with Ethereum. It's proof of Vitalik. But you don't know which ones he owns. He owns 40% of something, which is 70% of the voting shares or more. 70% means control. If he doesn't like you, what do you think that means? On my system, I don't get to change the rules. It's set in stone. So it's very simple. If you don't like me, or if I don't like you, it doesn't matter. I can't do anything. If I hate what you're doing and I hate your application, I can bitch about it on Twitter. So what? I can complain, and I can sit in conferences and go, this guy has a crap app. So what? And that's what permissionless is. That's what decentralization really is. So, before I leave you, I want you to think about this for a moment. What is better? A society where we have to engage as people, where we have to talk and be open, not hiding behind pseudonyms, but actually standing up for something we believe in. Or a system where anonymous trolls, people with power, people with money, get to dictate. Decentralization isn't what you've been sold. Decentralization requires responsibility. Thank you.